Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the GioMoShow. Not on 88.3 FM like it usually is, but in a podcast recording. I am joined here once again in the back room of WXOU studios with a very special guest. He is a former Up North radio host, a former teacher at Waterford Mott High School, and a Central Michigan graduate. He has served on the Rochester Community Schools Board of Education and was the voice of the Detroit Shock at the Palace of Auburn Hills. Currently, he works as the Development Associate at the School of Education and Human Services at Oakland and has been the voice of the Arena since 2005. It's Kevin Beers, everybody. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it, G.
It's definitely a pleasure having you here. I've always been, every time I go to the Arena, like I'm sure you hear this from everybody, you are aside from the game, you are definitely the thing that I walk home and say, like, man, that was awesome.
Well, I appreciate that so much. It's fun, right? We wanna make it fun.
Of course. So I guess for me, like the first thing that came to mind with someone who uses their voice so much is, do you have any like at-home remedies for your voice when it gets a little scratchy? Like, what's a go-to to fix your voice if you have to?
That's a great question, and I'm glad it came up actually because this will be something you can lock away. Then
I'm asking it for me as well.
Yeah. So believe it or not, it's not like honey or hot tea or anything like that. That stuff can give you some immediate relief.
Yeah.
My wife's a speech therapist, so that kind of helps. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Match made in heaven.
Yeah, exactly. It's flat out water.
Oh, okay.
It's just water because what's causing all that is a dryness in your vocal cords. And so the water is the only thing that can really, really bring it back. The tea obviously has water in it, and the heat and the honey and all that are soothing, so you feel better, and it can work short term, but for long term, water is the only thing that can do it.
That's awesome to know. I've heard remedies aside from like the tea and the honey, I've heard like just going out and exercising, working out, that works, but I don't know if that was just an excuse to tell me to go to the gym or something.
Yeah, that sounds like somebody that's saying, gee, you need a workout, man.
So good to know from a very trusted source. A speech therapist?
Yeah, I know. It just kind of happened, just the way it happened. I'll tell you a quick story, though. Yeah. That defies all of the logic that we're talking about. So another hat that I wear is I'm a songwriter, and one of my demos was being recorded at a studio, Sound Shop studio over in Macomb, and the woman who sang the song, who is absolutely incredible, I'm not going to name her because of the nature of the story.
Sure. Okay.
When she showed up to sing this song, because I hired her to sing the demo. Yeah. When she showed up, she took a pint of whiskey out of her purse. I'm not lying. She opened it, took two big, huge swigs out of the bottle, straight out of the bottle, put it down on the table and said, okay, boys, let's do this. I am not lying. It was awesome. It was absolutely awesome. And then she proceeded to just crush the song. It was amazing. It was. I still, every time I think of that, I laugh.
Unfortunately, I can't quite do that at this studio here, but
yeah,
it's a good
right.
idea to know in the future.
Yeah, it's not recommended. I'm not endorsing that. It just happened to work for her, I guess, right? Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So for you, I touched a little bit on your career and how you got to where you are now, but for you, can you give me kind of like a tour of where Mr. Kevin Beers has been before and how he got to where he is now at the Arena?
Yeah, you're talking mostly like kind of how the PA announcer thing, the road to that.
From radio to teaching to PA, kind of like how did that story go to bring you to here?
Yeah, so I was in radio actually. I hosted a morning show up north in Gaylord, Michigan, for a little over 5 years actually. The first time I went to Central, I was a broadcast and cinematic arts major. Okay, and when I left there and moved to Gaylord, I didn't grow up in Gaylord, but when I moved there, I started selling ads at a local radio station. Yeah, and I got to know the owner, and they liked the way I presented myself, and he said, you got to start doing high school football games on Friday night. And I said, okay, great. Does it pay something? He said, yeah, we'll pay you. So So I started doing local high school football games like Gaylord St. Mary, and then that led to, what else can you do? Do you like music? I said, yeah, I love music. What kind of music do you like? And I don't know. And the guy says, do you like 50s and 60s? I said, yeah, I love 50s and 60s music. And he said, okay, great. Why don't you do a Saturday morning show that's like a throwback to 50s and 60s and 70s music?
Right.
I said, great. So the Kevin Beers Rock and Roll Oldie Show was born.
No kidding.
Yeah, it was awesome. I ended up doing that for years. That was on Saturday morning. And then just a couple months after that, the program director at the station had been doing the morning show.
Yeah.
He wanted to back away from doing the morning show. They approached me about doing that. Yeah. And that was it for the next 5 years. And man, I got to tell you, G, I loved it. I mean, absolutely loved everything about it. And I got really passionate about radio, even about the business of it. And I mean, just everything, and threw myself into the community. I was a high school basketball coach at Gaylord St. Mary. Yeah. I was the United Way campaign chairman for Otsego County. I threw myself in and just loved it. And so it was really hard to leave it when I decided to leave it. But I was kind of being called. Actually, the basketball coaching kind of acted as a calling to teaching.
Oh, yeah.
So I ended up going back to school, back to Central to be a teacher, and did that. And I worked in radio. I worked my way through, paid for my own college, working in radio, and student loans, of course, right? You can't. It's hard to get out of here without student loans. So I did that, and then ended up teaching over at Waterford Mott for 14 years. And it was a great gig. I was a English or language arts teacher, and also taught TV production classes. Yeah. And we had a program, so it was pretty cool. So I had the broadcast thing going, and it was great. And I did that for 14 years. And it was actually during that time, during my time as a teacher, mm-hmm. that I got a call from a really good friend of mine, Jeff Smith. You probably know Smitty. He's on the men's basketball staff. He's Coach Campy's associate head coach. Well, he was in the same role way back then. Okay. Yeah. So this is his second time at Oakland, actually.
Right.
So I remember getting a call on my cell phone, and he left a message. He said, Beersy, I want to get you part of the program somehow. I don't know if you're at all interested, but there's an opening for somebody to kind of run the games and the contests that they play during timeouts and halftime and stuff like that. He said, I don't know if that's your thing, but if you're at all interested, give this lady a call. Her name was Tracy. Okay, She worked at athletics. Excuse me. And so I thought, I don't know if that's my thing, but he's inviting me to be a part of it, so I'm gonna take him up on it. So I called Tracy. She said, great, Coach Smith has been telling me about you. Come this Sunday, we have an exhibition game. We'll get to know each other. I'll show you how things go, blah blah blah. So I went Sunday, and she showed me the ropes. I stayed for the game. She said, okay, we start Tuesday. Oh, by the way, is there any chance that you'd be comfortable on the microphone? Because usually once or twice a season, the PA announcer has to miss for whatever reason.
Okay, yeah. And
I said, I'd be comfortable with that. And I said, I've got a radio background and everything. I'd be very comfortable.
Yeah.
So it seems logical, right? And so she said, okay, great. So Tuesday night I show up, I walk in the arena, and she has just this ashen look of death on her face.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it was terrible. So I walked up. I said, Tracy, what is wrong? And she said, the PA announcer is sick. He called us. He's not going to be here tonight. Is there any way? And I said, Tracy, we got this. Don't worry. You got a script or something? She said, yes, I have a script. Are you sure? I said, absolutely. So I stepped right in.
5 years.
Yeah, I got this. Exactly. Yeah. So I stepped in and did it that night. And I got a call from her the next day. And I have no idea. I've never asked if this is really the way it went down. But she called me and she said, hey, I got a call from Coach Campy this morning, and he really liked the way that you did that. what would you think of, doing more of that? And I said, well, my first thought is that somebody's already doing it. And she said, you're not going to believe this. He just started a new job. I think it was the Detroit Lions. I think he was with the Lions.
No
actually.
kidding.
Yes, and he said he actually was hoping to somehow back away because he does both men's and women's.
Yeah.
So Tracy said, what would you think of you doing the men's games? And he keeps doing the women's games. And then that seems to make everybody happy.
Yeah.
I said, okay, I'm in. And the rest is history. So I finished my 18th year. He did it for 11 years before me.
Oh, wow.
So think about that, G. That's 2 PA announcers in 29 years.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That's always consistent. It's something that I would say it's in. Obviously, like you can't really control that. It's more like a destiny kind of thing. But to have that kind of consistency is just awesome.
Yeah, and it's got to be rare, I would imagine.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
because from what it sounds like is, the position kind of flows. Like there was someone there for 11 years, but then he moved to work with the Lions, and then you came in just off of suggestion, and so to have it that consistent, and for you finishing 18 years is just awesome.
Yeah, it is. I agree. I love that there have only been 2 people for 29 years. That's pretty cool. Almost a third of a century.
Yeah, and to have that alongside, the head coach being there for going on 40 years.
Yeah,
it's something super consistent about the arena. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that helps with the fans. I mean, when you mentioned what you mentioned toward the top of this about whatever I do, add something to it or whatever, you get used to a certain thing. I mean, you get used to it. And so when I do have to miss, which is pretty rare, but when I do have to miss, the next time everybody says, oh my gosh, we missed you so much and everything, you get used to something. I mean, I've been there 18 years. So you notice it if it's not the same stuff, that's all it is. Yeah.
And something, I'm sure you get asked this a lot. I've read a little bit. I do my due diligence. I do my research, and I know that you've been asked about your signature call about traveling.
Yeah.
And can you tell me the story as to how that kind of like the first time you did it and how it kind of developed into your signature call?
Yeah. I'd love to be able to say, well, I am the coolest guy in the world, G, and I come up with stuff. I think about stuff and I write it all out and everything, and that's just not the case. I mean, some of the greatest ideas ever, just hit you over the top of the head.
Yeah.
This was one of them. That's exactly how it happened. So it was in the second half of a really close game. This is probably, gosh, I should probably know this, but it was probably about 2006, 7, 8-ish.
So more towards the beginning of your
yes.
tenure.
Oh, absolutely. We could research it because the player that I picture every time I tell this story, his name is Vova Severovis.
Ooh.
So we'll look him up sometime, okay? Vova Severovis, and we'll see when he played, because I think it was probably his senior year. So whenever his last year here was, that's when this was. Mm-hmm. And I remember because he was walking down the court. And so we were playing so our rivals at the time were Valpo. Mm-hmm. Valparaiso was a huge rival. And from they're in Oklahoma, Oral Roberts.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
This is the Summit League, right?
Yes, this is the Summit League. So so those were our two biggest rivals at the time. And I cannot for the life of me now remember which of those two it was.
Yeah.
But it was a rivalry game.
Sure.
And it was really close.
It was big time, yeah.
Yes, big time game. It was intense. The place was packed. It was awesome. Second half, I know it was second half because I can picture Vova walking, toward that side.
Yeah.
And so it was a big, either whichever opponent it was, or Roberts or Valpo, got called for a travel at a critical time in the game.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I had been doing, at the beginning of the season, I started doing That's Traveling. Okay. So I had already been doing that.
Yeah.
So I did That's Traveling. And out of nowhere, no thought to this whatsoever. I couldn't have stopped it, G, if I had a clothespin on my mouth. It wouldn't have stopped it. Out came, and you can't do that. It's that simple. There was nothing to do with me. It just came out, and so immediately I could hear there was a buzz like in the arena, you know, and I could tell everybody was talking about it. And this Vovosevrovis guy was walking at about mid-court, and he's looking around. He's looking around like this, and he looks at me.
Like, who said that?
Yeah, and he's looking around. He's looking at the crowd because everybody in the crowd's talking about it. And so then he ends up looking at me and going, and he laughed out loud, and he went and played, the next play. And so somebody came over to me then and said, you got to do that again. Everybody's talking about it, so keep doing that. So I kept doing that. Then when it really, really got cemented, the crowd started doing it with me, a little bit. And then when it really, it was the band. The band, the band leads
the pep band.
The band leads the show in that arena. I don't care what anybody says. They really, really do. Obviously, it's the players, but as far as the crowd and everything, it's the band. Everything.
Amazing.
Oh, they're incredible, and they always have been for my 18 years anyway. Yeah. So the next season, they started the chant. Okay. You can't do that. They started that. That had nothing to do with me. That was the band that started that. And it was the next season. And so then that took it to literally kind of legendary status because several years ago, this is a while ago now, but whatever, 7-8 years ago, something, my son found on ESPN.com an article about, it was like 125 quirky traditions at college sports games or something like that.
Something like they went looking for some like real niche stuff.
Yes, exactly. We were in there.
No kidding.
Yes, we were in there. That's why he brought it to my attention. And that was in there, and they talked about the you can't do that and the clapping and all that. And I don't know if you've ever noticed this or if anyone in your audience has ever noticed this, but watch a sporting event sometime. Even at the professional level, sometimes there will be a chant. But colleges literally all over the country, sometimes big bowl games even, in football, the student section will chant, you can't do that when there's a flag thrown.
Yeah.
And in basketball, we've heard it at Duke basketball games before. We've heard it literally all over the country. And it started here, and it started with no forethought whatsoever. I think to me, that's the funniest part of the whole story is that there was no forethought. It just kind of came out.
It just came out of nowhere. That is just awesome to hear. I love that part I love hearing that part of the game, and just the pep band is always, because even when there's not a lot, even when the arena's not packed, like it is usually for like a men's basketball game, they're just losing their minds.
Oh yeah,
the entire time. And I try my best when I'm not calling the game. I try to match the energy just as well.
Yeah, good for you. That's awesome. And I was worried, with the COVID setback and all that stuff. I was worried that something would be lost, and it took a little while for the crowd to come back, and now we're back all the way.
Oh yeah.
It didn't take any time for the band to come back. I mean, that is truly a tradition. Them and the way they razz the other team and the chants that they lead and everything. That's a tradition that is locked in, hopefully forever.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm curious as to so you said that and it just kind of came out.
Yeah.
And I know especially for PA announcing, and even the pep band has told me that there's a line. You don't like point at a certain player and chant their name or something. So I'm curious, where's the line? Like, what are you allowed to say or over the PA? What's too far?
So anything personal for sure.
Yeah.
You can't do. In fact, to be honest with you, between you and me and whoever else is with us, that is pretty much the borderline. And you can't do that because it is kind of personal because somebody just did it. You know what I mean? So I remember, in fact, a referee I get to know all the refs, when they come. And
I see you get the fist bumps all the time.
yes, right, yeah, absolutely, because I've been there so darn long.
Oh yeah.
And being a former coach, for a long, long time, I know how to buddy up with the officials. So I remember one of them coming to me sometime. He says, that you can't do that. I don't know if that's really practicing good sportsmanship. And I said, I get what you're saying. It's borderline. And I told him the story, and I said, we have people here that support it because of fan experience.
Yeah.
And I said, to be honest with you, I have seen enough evidence that the opposition gets fired up from it too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That they find it motivating. Yes, they find it motivating and they play better. So, and he laughed and he said, "All right, I get it. No problem." So that's probably borderline. And I'm really careful. In fact, I've done a lot of high school games too. I get asked, for that stuff. I'll never do that at a high school game.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Just because, these, and that's part of the argument, I guess. These student athletes are adults. I call them kids because I'm old. I'm 113 years old. So seriously, I'm 119 years old. So I would never do that at a high school game, for example. But it seems to work okay. It's hard to say. Certainly, there'll never be a swear word.
Oh, of course, yeah.
That's an obvious one. And I don't want to make people laugh at somebody, I guess, too.
Laugh at somebody?
Yeah, that to me would cross a big line. But I try to keep it pretty straight to the game. That's for my money one of the most important things. And I know I do goofy stuff that, it's designed for audience participation.
Yeah.
And some of it is designed for the players. Mm-hmm. My pregame introductions.
Yeah.
The players love those. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And especially with my son Griffin, who finished a 4-year term as a manager now. And I got my son Gage, who is a first-year student here. He's a manager also. Those guys tell me all the time what the players, talk about and stuff.
Yeah.
And, so sometimes over the years, some of them word has gotten to me that they would like something tweaked or they'd prefer, something. I'll do that, man.
Yeah.
I'll do that for them.
Yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, it's for them.
Right, and it gives something for the fans to get into too, and I'll tell you, it's almost kind of silly, but it's so gratifying and somewhat embarrassing at the same time. When somebody comes to me and says, like a woman I remember toward the end of this season came and said, "I have to tell you, I know we've never met, but I have to tell you, hey, we have background music."
I guess someone does.
So, she said, "I have to tell you, both my husband and my son say everything you say, like at home." Like if they like the dinner I made, they'll say, "And it's good." And they said they incorporate your stuff all the time, and they're going around the house going, "Jalen Moore," just out of nowhere. They'll do stuff. Yeah, that's silly. I mean, it's gratifying, but it's embarrassing at the same time.
A little bit,
yeah. But it's great. I mean, I love that fans get into it.
Yeah,
that's great. And. So whatever we can do to help people enjoy the experience, we're going to do.
Awesome. And one of my questions was actually how you have your certain cadенces with certain names like Jalen, you hold the end part. Does that kind of do you you kind of talk to the players on how they want their name said, or do you practice that kind of stuff? I'm just curious how you get the cadence for it.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I literally, because remember my background, I was a language arts teacher, right? And I was in radio and stuff. So I literally, I follow the name. I follow the name. Like when there's a new player, we've got a guy coming in next year. JUCO transfer, and his name is DQ.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think I followed him on Twitter. Yeah.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah, he's gonna be good. By the way,
Oh, I
look
can't
out for
wait.
him. Deep, his AAU coach, I'm friends with, and he told me you're gonna love this guy. Deep range is
No
what he
kidding.
said. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. So for him, it's gonna be DQ for 1, 2, 3, right?
Yeah.
Just you follow the name, and Jalen Moore, which is actually the same as Kendrick Nunn. Kendrick had it before Jalen had it.
Okay, so sometimes there's a pattern with it, just kind of on the from the syllables and that.
Yeah,
kind of
I don't like. I'd rather everybody have their own thing.
Yeah.
However, Jalen and Kendrick didn't play together.
Right.
So when somebody leaves, I think that's kind of up for grabs again.
I don't think so.
And Jamal Cain, he loved his.
Yeah.
The guys love the 1, 2, 3, and that the crowd and the dance team are doing it. Their pom poms are up in the air and stuff, and that's pretty cool. So it's stuff that people can join in, right? And it makes everybody feel part of the game or part of the show, right? And that's cool. I love doing that. But as far as the names or the pronunciation, I don't confer with players ahead of time. I'll follow the name and I'll throw it out there. And every once in a while, a suggestion will come back to me.
Yeah.
Where a player says, "Hey, is there any way you could do this or whatever?"
Sure.
Of course, yeah. And the answer is of course.
Yeah, it's of course. That's
Well,
what I
yeah, that was probably poor. Sorry, Neil. I did not mean that. But the answer is always yes. But it doesn't happen very often. And you just following the name and what feels like it's natural and flows and would be entertaining and energetic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and is there? Because I remember I did like a half a season of PA for my high school softball team.
Awesome.
Because my history teacher was one of the assistant coaches, and he needed somebody.
Great.
And there were some names there were like 5 consonants in a row.
Yeah.
I could not
Yes.
do it. So for you, when it comes to a name that's just impossible to pronounce, like, how do you kind of get around that? Do you just always like prepare and like nail it down before?
Yeah, the answer is yes. The preparation is the key, and I'll go find somebody. Back in the day, teams would always bring a sports information person, right? And so it was really easy. I'd seek out that person, or they would come and seek out the PA announcer.
Yeah,
and they'd say,
sometimes I've noticed they'll come to you and I on the sideline.
Need help with any pronunciations, guys, right? Yeah. And that's always helpful, and especially for those names. So I like the way that I do it when I get somebody, and if nobody's here, I'll even bother an assistant coach or a trainer, or I'll find somebody and ask them, do you know how to pronounce everybody's name? Yeah. And if they say yes, then that's my person, right?
Yeah.
So I'll find somebody and do that. I make little notes, accents or whatever to help. And but the way I like to do it is I'll say the name first, and I'll say, you just correct me as needed, okay? And so I'll say the name, and they'll say, yep. I'll say the name, yep. I'll say the name, and they'll say, actually, it's, whatever. Yeah. And so I'll do that. And so those really, really intimidating ones, like, well, I'm not going to think of a specific name, but a lot of times the names from an African country are very consonant heavy, right, and few vowels. I have found, all right, and take this to the bank and try it next season. I'm serious about this, G. Break it into little sections and try to lay it out that way. Try to play it out. Because it's uncanny how often it's pronounced exactly how it's laid out on paper. You just look at it in its whole, in its entirety, and it's intimidating as heck.
Yeah, it's way too much.
Yes, exactly. But if you break it down into 3 or 4 parts, then you can say the one part, say the next part, say the next part, and the next part. and then you string it together. That's how it is, and it's very logical. It's amazing how often that happens.
Yeah, from an English teacher, I'll take it.
Yeah, and
I'll take your word for it.
Yes, and remember where I was in radio and coached basketball was up north in Gaylord?
Yeah.
So strong Polish community in Gaylord.
Oh, yeah.
So I got to know Niedzwiecki and Dipzinski and, Prusakevich and names like that.
Skis and bitches,
yes,
yeah.
exactly, from Gaylord. So those names don't intimidate me. And I love it in pregame when I'm talking to either a coach or a sports information director or whatever, and I'll say, Prusakevich or whatever, and they'll stop and they'll look at me and they'll say, yes, nobody ever gets that. And I say, I used to live in Gaylord,
Yeah.
I got to know that one or whatever. So.
Yeah, I remember. It's just it was a game against Regina, and all the girls on that team, they were impossible. And the parents were next to me saying like, it's actually like this.
Yes.
During the game, it was so difficult.
Yeah.
My teacher was laughing at me the next day.
We have all been there, man. I'm sure it was, yeah. Or she. We have all been there for sure.
So you mentioned you brought up Jamal Cain and how he loved his announcement. And for me, I think the first time I heard you say his name was at the Michigan State game. I think his senior year at LCA. Mm-hmm. And from my research, you've done some work in the Palace as well as the arena in LCA. So for you, what's how much different is it doing the Palace or doing LCA for PA? Because I'm sure it's just everything scaled up when you're doing PA for there.
Yeah, that's well put. Scaled up. It is. It's everything is bigger except the workspace. The workspace seems to shrink as the stage grows, which is really, really weird. That was the thing at the Palace. There were so many wires and stuff. There was almost zero workspace. Yeah. You know what I mean? So
you got to jot stuff down, and you can't write on wire.
Yes, exactly. So at the Palace, when I was doing the shock, I got used to it, and I was able to develop a system. But every time I go down to LCA, which we'll be doing again this next season, so this December we should be playing at LCA. But I gotta figure it out. It's because it's different. This I have down pat. I've done hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of games here. But when it's on the road, it's weird. And can I share a quick story with you? Because it's kind of okay. I think this is kind of relevant, and I love self-deprecating humor too. Okay, so this was back in 2006 when Oakland was the host school for the first and second round NCAA tournament games at the Palace.
No kidding.
Yep. So I got to do the games. In fact, I got to do half of the games. The other guy, remember the other announcer? Yeah. He got to do the other half. So we split him.
You split time with him.
Which was awesome. Yeah, I was so glad that we both were able to do that. It was cool because he's such a cool guy. So just before the first one, and I never get nervous. I mean, I was in radio and stuff, so a microphone doesn't scare me at all. And I had already done, a couple seasons, so nervous isn't right. I get fired up, but not nervous. So one of the NCAA guys comes up, says, "Okay, any last minute questions?" Says, "No, I think we're good. You got everything you need?" "Yep, got everything I need." He says, "Okay, great. Hey, how's it feel to be one of 8 people in the world about to do what you're going to do?" And I went, "Oh, yeah. And that was the one moment in all of this where I genuinely got nervous. I started thinking, holy smokes, he's right. There are 8 people literally in the world right now that are doing this. And that was a little bit intimidating.
Oh my God, yeah.
So it took me a half to recover from that. And then it was finally, I got it out of my head, but the guy got in my head. It was funny.
Was it a guy from the other team, or?
Yeah, he might as well have been, right? Yeah, yeah, right. Maybe the guy that wanted to do the PA or something.
Everyone's got haters.
Yes, exactly, right.
Yeah, so I can't wait to be at LCA here in your. Would you be? Oh no, that would be Michigan State as the home team.
No,
or
it's
officially-
Oakland.
Oh, Oakland be host.
Yeah, we're the home team, so that's the agreement. And I'll echo Coach Campy on this. Coach Izzo hanging on to this rivalry is beyond cool.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it, especially now when the Big Ten expanded to 20 conference games.
Yeah.
It would have made an awful lot of sense because that took away 2 non-league games,
Yeah.
right? So it would have made a lot of sense for Izzo, to call Campy and say, "Look, we can't do this anymore." He didn't. He doubled down on it, and signed a new contract and all that. But when they first started playing, and they were talking about it, he said, "Yeah, I'll play you, Greg. I'll play you every year, but I'll never play in your gym." And so
really?
yes, that's what he said.
Play in your gym.
Yes, I'll never play in your gym. All right, I can't afford that, but So that's my worst Tom Izzo ever. But so that's the agreement. So 1 year it's at Michigan State on their
Breslin,
campus.
yeah.
Yep, at the Breslin Center, and then the next year it used to be at the Palace.
Yeah.
God, there were some great games at the Palace. K. Felder.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man, he tied it up with a 3 at the buzzer to send it to overtime. We lost by 1.
Yeah.
Michigan State was the number 1 ranked team in the country that night.
You know what? In my sports reporting class, we looked at that specific game as an example piece.
Yes.
Or a game summary.
It was incredible. It was absolutely amazing. And Felder had like 38 that night or something. I mean, it was incredible. It really was. But that's the deal with Michigan State. So we play him every year, and he doesn't have to do that. And
Yeah.
I mean, so that just says an awful lot about that man's character and the relationship that Izzo and Campy have.
Yeah, for as long as the time as they've been doing this, and as long as the time they've been friends,
Yeah.
it is awesome, and especially just because I mean, for me personally, I got friends at Michigan State, so I get to pretend to talk trash to them.
Yeah.
About did you guys go to the Oakland game? And they're like, no.
Right.
And
And
I was there.
Yeah. And it's bound to happen, right? It's coming. I mean, it's bound to
It's got
happen
to.
sometime. There's going to be, maybe it'll even take an injury. In fact, that night, to be fair, with that huge Felder game, and we lost in overtime by 1 and so forth, and they were number 1 in the country, they were missing Valentine.
Yeah, that's right.
Remember? And
That's
he
right.
was their
Yes.
he was their main player. He didn't play that night. So maybe it'll take something like that to get us over the hump. Maybe it won't.
Yeah.
Because
I mean,
we've
I hope it
had
wouldn't.
good games against when they were at full strength too. Eventually we're going to break through in that, and it's going to be glorious.
It's going to be so sweet.
I know. It will be. It'll be really, really cool. I remember the first time we beat a ranked opponent was at the Palace. It was Oregon. Oregon was ranked 23rd in the country, and we were the second game. Michigan State and Texas played game 1, and as I recall, they might have both been ranked in the top 10.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it had a Final Four feel to it. It
Yeah.
truly did. It was incredible. And then Oakland and Oregon was the second game, and Oregon was ranked 23rd in the country. So expectations weren't exactly high.
Yeah.
And Oakland won. It was great. And we've won. Well, I don't have to tell you. I mean, and your audience, most of your audience, I'm sure knows too. We've beaten ranked opponents. We've beaten top 10 opponents. Legit.
It's
you know?
happened.
Yes.
They won't believe. They won't believe me. They won't believe us. But
Right. No, it happened. Tennessee was ranked 7th in the country, and we beat them at Tennessee. The second year of the contract had them playing in the arena.
Yeah.
And they played here, and we beat them again. We beat Tennessee twice in a row. They weren't ranked in the top 10 that time, but the first time we played them at their place, they were 7th in the country, and we won that game. It was incredible. It was one of the championship years, you know. And Georgia, I'm pretty sure Georgia was ranked when we beat them also. We beat them here.
Mm-hmm.
Almost beat them at their place, too, the year before that. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So it's bound to happen sometime, and it'll be great.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of hoping if we can twist Izzo's arm a little bit to play in the arena, then I think that's when the tide might turn. But
Yeah.
yeah, you sounded pretty. Your
Which is
impression of him sounded pretty stern about it.
Yeah, which I think that's exactly why that's probably not going to happen, because he knows that would increase the chances.
Yeah, he's like, I don't want that to happen.
I can't afford that.
Yeah, he wants to look generous and doing us a favor.
Yes, which he is.
Yeah.
Especially, like I said, especially when the Big Ten expanded to 20 conference games. I think most everybody, especially on the inside, thought, oh, well, there goes our game with Michigan State. And it just didn't happen because that guy is who he is, and their relationship is what it is.
So moving back to the arena here, there are, aside from like basically the men's basketball games, there are a lot of times where games are played in the arena, and admittedly it's a little bit empty. Because like for some of the women's basketball games, I'll go there because there'll be times like where I'm not calling, but I still want to watch. I'll be there, and I'm one of like 10 people in the stands, and it sucks to see. But for you as the PA announcer, does your strategy kind of change when there's not a lot of actual crowd, and it's more on you to kind of fill the volume?
Excellent question. It really is, and a couple things pop into mind. One of which is, as far as strategy, I will sometimes, if there are not, and sometimes crowds for men's games too are really, really late arriving.
Yeah.
So for women's games, for example, when it's not well attended, and my script says I need to start reading at 20 minutes.
Yeah.
If there are only a handful of fans, in the seats, I might delay that a little bit. So that's really the only strategy. Mm-hmm. Because my thought has always been, if there are only 10 people there, and we have 15 players in uniform that night, they're going to get the absolute experience of every other night, the same experience. Well, it's easy to say the same experience as when there's 4,000 people.
Yeah.
Naturally, everything gets amped up, when that's the case. But for the most part, from my chair, everybody will get the same energy, the same. You can't do that. I mean, the same. It's good. Everything. All of that will be the same. And that actually, G, was, I don't know that was endorsed, I guess, over the COVID lockdown.
Oh yeah.
Because there were no fans allowed, right? Mm-hmm. For the one COVID year. And they still brought me, to do the games. And so I took that as a signal. I remember having a conversation with Sam Nelson, who was she was the game day engagement. She was the lead for that. I remember having a conversation with her about this, and she said, yes, you're absolutely right. We want this to be the closest to a regular experience as we can get for our student athletes. And the only way to do that is to have, a PA announcer.
Yeah.
So there was nobody cheering, but I did my thing to the best of my ability with literally nobody in the seats. And so that was,
I'm sure that was challenging.
It was a challenge. Yeah. But keeping the focus on the student athletes, at that point, because usually I focus more on the crowd than the student athletes. It's as far as entertainment value, But yeah, so that was interesting. So yeah, I'm gonna be as consistent as I possibly can as far as bringing energy and doing, the traditional stuff, because. Yeah. If somebody goes to 2 games a year, and if they really liked what the PA announcer did at the first game. And if, I picture a conversation in the car, hey, I wonder if the PA announcer will do that again. I want the PA announcer to do that again for those guys. You know what I mean?
To get them to come back.
Yes, I think it's important so they'll enjoy themselves. And, you can broaden that even because athletics sometimes is known as the front porch of a university.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
So you think about that. I mean, this is, this might seem like a stretch, but it's just really broadening the topic. Let's say one of the people in that car is an 8-year-old kid in 3rd grade or whatever, Now that kid likes coming to men's or women's basketball games or volleyball games or whatever it is, and they get sucked into this and they love coming to campus. And they're like, God, I love Oakland. This is such a cool place.
Yeah.
We might end up getting them as a student someday.
Exactly.
Because of that. Like my son Griffin, he might be embarrassed by this, but that's exactly why he chose this place. And I remember this conversation, G, and it was awesome. I'll never forget it, in fact, because he wouldn't even look at anywhere else. My wife went to Michigan State, and she finally talked him into going and visiting the place, but he just was not interested. And so I remember pulling him aside one time saying, Griffin, why just Oakland? I love Oakland, but why just Oakland? And he says, Dad, I feel like I grew up there. I can't imagine not going to college there.
Man.
So maybe we're building more Griffins. I mean, it's very possible. We're helping kids fall in love with Oakland by doing that. And so remember that. Athletics is the front porch of a university. And that's true everywhere.
Definitely. And that kind of extends towards us at WXOU for those who can't go to the porch. They can hear the porch or watch it otherwise. So
100%.
That's a fantastic way to put it.
Absolutely, because it's all part of, it's not consciously marketing. It's not.
No.
But that's one of the purposes it serves. Mm-hmm. And so we've got to acknowledge that, and we better embrace it too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you can't just let that. Yeah, you can't just let that go. You got to use it.
No. Yes. Yeah. Embrace it, and I love it. I think that's so. I think it's great that, you guys could have that impact on our community and on kids around here and stuff. And, same thing with the game day experience and all that. So, we're all part of the same family, and we want the same things out of it. And that should be one of the things is that, we want this every time somebody comes here for whatever reason it is, we need to make sure that they're having the best experience they possibly can. So whenever they think of Oakland University, they think, man, I love it there.
You got to leave a great impression on them.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you only get one.
Yes, you're right.
Exactly.
You're right.
So to wrap up this will be my final question, and it's a big one. I saved it for last.
Okay.
So I've talked to some other people asking about you. I talked to a close friend of yours, Anthony Galena.
Yeah.
And from my research, you are quite the people person. You have a great connection with people from the get-go and even throughout. So for you, like, how important is it to make someone feel welcome and to make that kind of good connection right away? For you, where does that come from? And I'm digging deep here. I know.
Yeah, yeah.
Where does that kind of side of you come from, or has this always been a part of you?
So it always has, and I have to say, my mom and dad. For that might seem like a cop out, but it's truly not. I mean,
I don't think so.
Because we are, especially as we're forming, as we're developing our own selves. We have to look at our models, right? And mom and dad are always models. Yeah. Well, my dad's been dead for a long, long time. And, one of the things, tremendous work ethic, like Abraham Lincoln type work ethic. That was my dad. And the other thing was that he could talk to anybody anywhere at any time and find a connection. And I'm not exaggerating. We would be, he grew up in the Thumb. Okay. And my grandpa, his dad was a preacher. And so they moved a lot when he was a kid.
Yeah.
And so he would love in the summers when I was a little kid, love to take me back and show me his old stomping grounds. So I remember many times being like at an ice cream shop or something like that in this tiny, tiny little town in the Thumb. And all of a sudden he'd strike up a conversation with somebody that he's never seen before, never talked to before, didn't know anything about him. And by the time I was halfway through my ice cream, they were coming up with all kinds of connections that they shared and all this stuff. And he was so genuine about it. And I would look at the look on the other person's face. He absolutely made their day when they did, when he would do stuff like that. So I honestly, you're asking for the real thing. I'm going to give you a real answer. Mm-hmm. That's what it is for me. It's, I think that's the basis of it. And the same with my mom. I get so much joy in bringing others joy. I think that's kind of what it boils down to. If you want a soundbite or whatever, that's what it is. And so, I mean, I live that. I truly do. I live to have an impact on people, to have a positive impact on people. And if there's a way that I can contribute to making your day just a little bit better, that's as big a success as I can be that day.
That's awesome to hear, and you do a great job at it. In the PA, what better way to reach people than to basically directly talk to them?
Yeah,
and to kind of give them that experience, 4,000 people at a time.
Yeah, and I love it, and I do personalize it. I've found a good balance. I personalize it without making it an individual thing. You know what I mean? I consider the group to be the individual, if that makes any sense at all.
No, I totally get that.
Okay, all right. Yep.
So, Mr. Beers, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, learning about who you are, what you've done, and wish you nothing but success this, all these upcoming games that you got to do. Thank you for coming out to the GioMoShow. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, G. And I don't want to put you on the spot and embarrass you at all, but you're a special dude. You truly are. And, we're all going to be able to watch you develop. And, one of my favorite sayings ever, I'm a sayings guy. I love sayings. And one of my all-time favorite go-tos is what you are becoming is far more important than what you are accomplishing. You're accomplishing a ton, and that's great. You know what I mean? What you're becoming, you can just see it. You can see the character. You can see how you care about other people, and you can see how your leadership style is one that you want others to succeed, and you're willing to put them first. That is that's special. So please keep being you.
I'll try. Thank you so much.
Good.
And thank you everybody for listening to the GioMoShow. We'll be back on Thursday at 6 with another live show on WXOU, and there'll be more podcasts to come.